Welcome to the Grow Fast podcast, where we talk with leading sales, marketing, and personal growth experts about how companies can accelerate sales, optimize marketing, and grow their businesses fast. Let's go. Hey, Christian. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my pleasure. And just before, you told me that you're in Austin. How long have you lived in Austin?
I've been here for 13 years. It's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, you've lived all over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
Yeah, on your journey to the U.S. Let's stick with the U.S. for a second.
Sure.
Have you lived in other places in the U.S.?
Yes, I've lived in Philly for a little bit, just outside of Philly, South Florida, Los Angeles, and then Austin.
Okay. What's the number one thing about Austin that is different from any other place in the U.S.?
It's it's a very interesting blend of good food, live music, tech.
Wow. Okay.
So it's an unusual combo, and it's also it feels like a small town. You can have coffee with almost anyone, but it's sort of a significant. It's a little bit over 1 million, so it doesn't feel like a massively large city.
Okay, that's interesting because Seattle's roughly the same size. If you take in the Seattle East Side Bellevue area as well, also good food, good music, and tech. I would say though the prices here are pretty high, whether that's housing or going out to eat. I love to go out and eat. I lived in Asia for 25 years off and on. So I just love to go out to, local restaurants, and it's very convenient to do that there. It's very affordable. I don't even care what country, even Japan these days is affordable. Here, it'll set you back a bit. So what's it like in Austin?
It's okay. I think it's probably less than Seattle. That'll be my guess. But it's expensive for Texas. Austin is the most expensive place in Texas when it comes to cost of living. I didn't realize that. Well, it's just such a cool place, right? And you got Joe Rogan there, and everybody else is. Joe Rogan's there. Elon Musk is here. The Cybertrucks are here. The whole thing, right? So, they've driven a lot of these people that moved here with corporate. I think you just mentioned also offline. Some of these big ones, they have corporate offices here as well. There's a lot of tech, so that drove up the prices. But it's also the most desirable place in Texas because it's hilly. There's hill country. There's wine. There's rivers. There's forests. So it doesn't feel like a desert. Yeah. And like you would imagine Texas being.
Our vision of Texas is just
it doesn't feel that way,
and then if you're not in the city, it's all like farmland and sagebrush.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the typical image.
That's what I thought when I came. When I first visited, I was like, oh, this is going to be like cowboys, horses, and a flat, semi-desertic sort of place, but it was not.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I want to talk to you about the work you do as a performance coach, and how you motivate people and how you help them. But before we get into that, maybe we can talk a little bit about your background, because you have a very unique background. I think you immigrated to at least a couple different countries as you were growing up. You might have had a bit of a refugee status. I'm not sure.
I did. I did.
So maybe can you just tell us a condensed version of your childhood, and then how did you end up? What was the route you took to get here to the U.S.?
It was. This is literally my 6th country in my 4th continent.
Okay.
And it basically, it started pretty dramatically.
You haven't been to Antarctica, but every place else you've been pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, we lived in Chile. My dad's Chilean, my mom's Russian. We lived in Chile for a while. There was a massive military coup. We ended up refugees. A bunch of people died. My dad was in a concentration camp, so we were out of there. We received asylum in Germany, started over there. Then my mom wanted to go back to Russia. We went there. We were poor, lived in like this communal apartment situation, like sort of the worst you can imagine about the Soviet Union. That's what it was. And then my dad got this offer to go to Africa. So by age 7, I moved to Africa. This was literally my 3rd continent and my 4th country by age 7. And I grew up there, and about a year in, there was a civil war that started up north, so we got bombings in the city, that kind of thing. So it was very chaotic, very unstable, but also fun, especially in Africa. There was just, I was sort of this free-range child, and we're in the tropics, so we did all kinds of fun stuff there. And then eventually, there was another crisis. My parents got divorced, and we relocated back to the Soviet Union in the worst years before the whole thing was already sort of rotting from the inside, right? It was mid 80s. And we ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment. Again, the same thing, right? I slept in the kitchen for a few years. And when the whole thing fell apart, right after I was graduating from college with a degree in economics. And I was musical my whole time. So I decided to do music out of, like 21-year-olds want to do music, right? More than go into banking.
Sure.
Which is what I did. And I just happened to be, lucky and hardworking and talented, and became one of the top pop stars in Russia for about a decade.
Oh, that's amazing!
All of that territory of ex-Soviet Union, so 15 different countries.
That's amazing, and I'm sure we could spend hours just talking about each one of those places.
Yeah.
And I did notice on your profile that you went to it looks like a Russian university. So did you learn Russian?
Yeah, I spoke it from birth. My mom's Russian, so. Yeah, I have behind me. You can't see it. You see this little frame thing at the bottom. Yeah. So it's basically 2 columns. It's an old page, like it's yellow now, and it's Spanish and Russian words that I learned first when I was a baby. So they wrote it down.
Well, your mom was very enlightened to speak Russian to you so that you have that foundation.
Yeah.
Even though you weren't originally in Russia, you ended up there a couple of times, but that's
exactly. Awesome. Yeah, and then I learned 2 more by age 9 when I was in Africa.
Which was?
Portuguese and English. Yeah.
Wow. Great, man.
Yeah,
okay, so I'm going to call when I go on my next, trans global trip.
Yes, exactly. The International Men of Mystery. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could look back at that, those experiences, especially let's just say up until your teenage years, I'm sure there was a lot of hardship. But what were some, maybe one or two most important things lessons that you learned, or what were some of the positives that you were able to take away from that experience?
Oh, there was so much, actually. It's a long list. I would say that probably number one, number two. Number one is that the advantage over somebody who grew up in the first world is that people in the first world have it so good that their fear of hardship prevents them from doing bold things. So when you go through a lot of hardships early on and you go, it's actually not a big deal, then you're much more able to take risks because you're less afraid to fail, to hit sort of a rock bottom, the imaginary rock bottom everybody imagines. So I think that's one. It's that it gives you much more, I can take suffering more easily, right?
Yep.
And I'm okay with it. And it's actually not that hard to take mild suffering, actually. So it's mostly imaginary and it blocks us the whole thing. So the second one, I think, is that if nothing is certain, then everything is possible. And it's sort of in my life, very experientially, uncertainty was was there, like the underpinning of life. So again, in the West, we're addicted to certainty. We want to guarantee X, Y, and Z.
I think we're addicted to the illusion of it because there is no certainty.
Yeah, there is no certainty, but that illusion, that desire to feel that way, it's something I think that is, I would say, limiting to people who grow up, in relative comfort and safety.
It's funny. A couple things come to mind. I think it was Seneca who was one of the, Roman Stoics. Philosophers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he made a practice of, it was like 4 or 5 times a year where he would just take nothing from his house, just a robe, just and go out and sleep outside in a park for 2 weeks and have to beg for food and just get by, because he thought that would teach him a couple of things. One, it made him so much more appreciative of all the comforts that he had when he got back home. Yeah. But 2, he realized that if I lose everything, I can still survive, because people want that certainty and they're afraid of that risk and losing things, right?
Yes, so, that's exactly it. Yeah.
So, you learn the same thing as some of the great philosophers. Let's jump forward a bit here. How did you end up here in the U.S.?
Well, I married an American, and she actually moved from the U.S. to be with me in Russia. So our children were born in Russia and Ukraine. We lived in Ukraine for a little bit. And and we had no intention to move into the US. She's sort of this kid, this American kid from Wisconsin who had a early international experience. She went as an exchange student to Brazil, and she just loved living abroad. And she always wanted to live abroad, not in the US. So she moved to be with me. And of course, I was a fan of America my whole life, American culture, entrepreneurship, freedom, the whole thing, right? I'm definitely a Western thinking kind of guy. But I had a brand over there, right? Mm-hmm. So, sold millions of albums, and, you can do a lot of things when you have an established brand. So I wasn't going to give that up. And then what happened is, as she was having babies, Deb's autoimmune issues became an issue because of the climate. The climate had an unexpectedly negative effect on her. So she was getting worse and worse. And basically I just said, look, we can't stay there. You're not going to be healthy here. We have to move. So we sort of made that jump, that leap, and started over because, of course, here no one knows or cares who I am, and that's okay.
So you had this image of America before you got here, and a lot of people have the image. Like I spent a lot of time in Asia, and people have the image of Hollywood. Everything they say, all the things they've seen in the movies, all the good, the bad, and the ugly of Hollywood's depiction of life in America. And they get here and they're like, wow, it's a little bit different, What was what you expected and what was unexpected?
Well, actually, Hollywood itself was unexpectedly basic, right? Okay. I remember the first time I came to the States, and of course I go to Hollywood. I want to go and see the stars in the pavement, and it's like a dump, right?
Yeah, and, I know really it is that whole area. I went a few years back with my kids, and I was like, God, I don't think I should have my kids around here.
I know, it's just so basic and not glamorous at all, and everything. So it's really more a facade, more of a symbol, right? So that obviously was there. But I would say most things I was just extraordinarily impressed with, right? Everything from sort of the high level stuff of freedom of speech. You're not going to be arrested for saying something. You're not afraid of the police, for example, right? The police is the police. They're doing their work. The infrastructure, you can travel all over the US and the roads are basically equally awesome everywhere. The stores are equally awesome everywhere. Grocery stores are equally awesome everywhere. And, Americans don't realize that that's not normal, right? If you go to the third world, you have one or two major cities. You go 150 miles out, and it's like a precipitous drop in everything, So, and having that such a massive country have all of this, to me, that was mind blowing. Everything from, again, the sort of the lack of bureaucratic heaviness. Lower taxes, how easy it is to start a business. Like the list goes on and on and on. I'm a big fan, basically.
Yeah. In fact, I think I heard that you're writing a book, or maybe you've already finished it.
I did. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's the little book of big reasons to love America.
Yeah. So it was born from those observations. I would say to Deb, you don't understand. This is a big deal, right? And she'll go, I don't know, seems like a normal thing for me. So eventually when things got really ugly, I feel like there was this season after COVID approximately where the levels of self-loathing in culture, in American culture, were peaking. And I was looking at her going, what is wrong with these people, right? It's like, they should be more grateful. And she was like, just write a book. You tell me all these observations all the time. So basically I did. I wrote 10 chapters, 10 reasons to love America. And then in it's a very optimistic book. There's all kinds of illustrations, archival pictures. So it's very multimedia, lots of crazy stories from the third world because I try to contrast, but also there's in every chapter, there's a little bit of a warning of, hey, please don't import this ideology or this way of thinking because that's not going to help you. So, yeah.
No, it's true. I one of the things that I really appreciate about America is the social mobility. And, you listen to some of the rhetoric out there and it's like, oh, America's got, all these structural barriers and everything. And I was like, people, you have no idea what structural barriers are. Think about the caste system. Think about a class system. Think about, if living in a country, and there are many countries around the world where maybe 20, 30 families control everything. And if you're not in one of those families, you are a have not, right? And it doesn't matter if nobody in your family went to university, guess what? You're not going to university. I mean, in here, I've seen it time and time again where people have been just remade themselves several times over.
Absolutely.
And it's a country where immigrants for the hundreds of years have came here and done amazing things. So, I'll step down off my soapbox. There are, obviously we do have some issues and stuff like that, but you can do a couple things. You can focus only on the issues, or you can look at the positives, or maybe you can kind of look at both in a balanced manner. I think that's probably healthier. Which kind of leads now into, so you came to America, and at some point you decided, I think you're doing a couple different businesses right now. One, you're doing a performance coaching, personal performance coaching. You're also doing some work in Africa to help children there. Is that right?
Yeah. So I actually do three things. So the Africa thing is basically
only three.
Only three. Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm actually paring it down to three. Unfortunately, But basically, Africa it's just an after-school academy. I just had this idea. I did a lot of work in philanthropy for a few years, especially when I first landed. So I learned at the highest level. I was overseeing projects of multi-million-dollar projects in charity. And I realized there's certain ways of doing charity that actually propagate poverty, and others that don't. Right? So,
explain.
Well, for example, a lot of these sort of big agencies that essentially are almost like have a monopoly to access to massive funds from the government. A lot of them really are not incentivized to do transformational work. They're incentivized to just show Excel sheets with numbers, right? So the people on the ground, so there's a chain reaction, right? And obviously they're all designed to do good, but a lot of them just don't solve the problem. They're almost like a welfare state version of an international charity, for example, right?
Yeah. And if you were to solve the problem, then their reason for being would be,
exactly. So they're not incentivized to solve the problem per se. Right. So they don't do. Now there are exceptions, war, emergency situations. Absolutely, there are exceptions where you have to just keep people alive. I get it.
Sure.
But generally speaking, there's tons of money that goes into charities that don't solve a problem. And I'm sort of entrepreneurial, and I'm like, you know what? If I can get a kid to have some self-esteem, like believe that they can do something, some character training, some mentorship, if they can speak English and they can learn how to use a computer and an internet connection, and we can give them some skills from like basic literacy to a basic internet. You can be a freelancer on Fiverr, right?
Right.
And by age 15, you can get out of poverty. So that was sort of the idea. And so we've been doing this for a few years now. If you want to check it out, it's ascend.academy. That's the after school academy.
And I mean, just give me an idea of like, how do you pick a location, hire people, and then how do you pick which students are going to come through the program, and even the curriculum for the program and all that
question.
stuff?
Yeah. So we came up with a curriculum based. I actually don't remember even how we sourced it, but we have one and it works. I basically went to Mozambique. Well, how did I pick the location? Well, A, one of the poorest countries in the world. B, I have the advantage of having grown up there, speak the language, know the history, so I can connect with the locals. So we went there, we did sort of a scouting trip and everything, and I presented the idea to a few people that might be interested. So one, like obviously we needed a leader, so I had to convince this one guy who was just extraordinary international guy, worked for World Vision, has his own business. I'm like, look, I need someone who is local but has some Western thinking, so he can sort of make things happen. So I convinced him over breakfast. He said no, then he said yes. So, okay, I have that piece. Then I went to a local church and I said, I would love for you to give me some volunteers. What we'll do, we'll rent that you see that building over there it's not bringing you money. We'll rent that, several times a week, give you some money, and you give an opportunity to your church members to go mentor these kids about character, stuff like that. Do you have people who speak English? Yes. Do you have people who do IT? Yes. Perfect. This is it. So anyway, and then to pick the kids, we went to a local middle school in an area that was super poor. and right outside of Maputo, Mozambique. And we're talking about most of those kids, the families make under $2 a day. That's how they live, so it's extreme poverty, like officially extreme poverty, worst of the worst. And they live in these sort of shanty towns right around the city, just like you see it in favelas in Brazil or Mexico City, all of those places where, there's just no infrastructure there, but it's better than living out there somewhere for them.
Yeah.
So those are the kids. And they go to this middle school, thankfully provided by the government, but it's like a disaster for middle school in the sense that there's not a lot of resources. So I remember we had to come up with the money to fix their bathroom for 1,800 kids. It was just, the bathroom wasn't working. It was that basic, and they had 3 computers for the whole 1,800 kids. And none of them, of course, the kids didn't have any access. It was 1 for the government liaison and 2 for teachers to submit some report feedback to whoever. The Ministry of Education or something like that. So, and then 2 of them got stolen, and we had to gift them 2 more so the teachers can use it. It's that kind of thing, right? So, So I became friends with I think it was he was not was he the director, maybe vice president or whatever the role is, young guy. And I said, would you find me the kids that have the highest chance of success? And we had some criteria, and we put them through some processes. But that's how we came up with it. They helped us.
That's awesome. And then did you solicit donations here in the U.S. then, or what did you do?
Yeah. So it's basically tapping shoulders, friends and family kind of stuff, right? It's like a mom and pop situation. And because I was doing it honestly out of really just a creative, I was like, okay, I think this is going to work. I think it's unique, We're not reinventing the wheel, but it is sort of, it's simple. It's an elegant solution to a problem. I think it's going to work. So people, when you tell the story that this is the model, the right people will say, yeah, sure, here's $5,000 or something like that.
And how do you measure success?
We measure success by, first of all, self-confidence behavior, self-esteem. You can, when you talk to the parents, they'll all say, he used to be this way, now he's that way. She used to be this way, now she's that way. She's super shy, and now she wants to volunteer and raise her hand, at home, or she speaks English to me at home. That's amazing. There's no chance these kids would have access otherwise. So that's one. English language, obviously, that's 2. So we have these videos of them naming things or singing a song in English, that kind of thing. And then, just demonstrating some basic computer literacy. We have a bunch of computers in the classroom, so everyone has a computer there, which is nothing. It has nothing to do with what their situation would be if they weren't in part of the academy.
And how many kids have gone through the program?
Oh, it's just a tiny thing. It's 26 kids. So it's a boutique.
but they're going through it now, or when did it start?
It started 4 years ago. So all of them.
So it's still early days. Yeah.
Yeah, it's early days. So it's a proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
And basically the temptation. So even though agencies that wanted to partner with us, that are like the type that I was referring to, they were like, okay, we're going to do 5 kids at a time. They'll take 3 months. I'm like, no. I want 1 kid to enter the program from one end as this normal kid from the ghetto. And I want him to exit around 15, 16, making money, not poor anymore. That's the program, right? Hyper-focused. So, and honestly, my book, if I can demonstrate that with 26 kids, then I can scale it. I can show it to other people and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, there have been some programs in the U.S. with high school kids that had no chance or even aspirations to go to college because they thought they would never, 1, academically get there, but 2, they know that they would never have the money, right?
Yeah.
And you've had some different organizations that have gone in to select high schools and said, anybody who gets like a 3-point grade average or higher, or whatever the requirement is, you'll get 4 years of college paid for. And I love programs like that because it's just like it doesn't completely strip away this lack of hope. I mean, because if you're growing up surrounded, in a community where nobody's aspiring to go to college,
they don't know anyone. Yeah,
it's hard for you to believe that you can actually get there, even if somebody says, "Hey, I'll write the check for you." But if you can create a kind of critical mass of people who start to share that aspiration and are going through together, like what you've done, 26 kids going there 4 or 5 hours a day, or however many it is, several times
that's
a week.
Exactly it. Yeah.
You create change there, and that group can become a bigger group, So I've seen that in companies. I've seen that in communities. So
it's not, really important. It's not complicated at all. I mean, it's also a mindset, because these kids grow up in the place where most of their families don't have two parents, for example. Zero of the people that live in those slums, zero are professionals. Yeah. Not one. So that they literally don't know anyone who's a professional. And then all of a sudden they are in an air-conditioned room with a meal a day, a uniform, the self-esteem, their confidence goes up. And these professionals are volunteering their time to be with them and tell them, you matter.
That's awesome.
So they see them in real life. They would develop friendships with these mentors. Yeah. So we have these interviews with them they're like standing in front of their house, their little like cinder block kind of place situation, right? Or corrugated steel kind of place. And they say, so who do you want to be? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a singer. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a policeman. I mean, they wouldn't have even imagined that if they didn't have access to that reality, basically.
That's awesome. Well done on that. What led to you becoming a performance coach in the U.S.?
You are best equipped to help the person you once were, right?
Okay.
So when I was literally playing sports arenas and selling millions of albums, you achieve that when you have a certain fire in your belly and you have a vision and a work ethic, all of these things together. And I just had it. And it's a mystery. Like, I can probably trace how that comes together in a character, but ultimately you either have it and you don't. And when you're at the top of that, also something happens to you and with you. You usually see so much reward for your giftedness and your talent. And the world in the marketplace rewards the outer game, the performance. What the world does not reward is character and inner game, right? Emotional self-regulation, relationships, all kinds of sort of quote unquote soft skills. It doesn't reward it. There's no signal to that. There's no feedback for that. And these things also take a lot of time, right? So they're not instantly demonstrable. So what happens with a lot of people who succeed, they burn out very quickly. They go through a couple of divorces. They become just weird people, right? And to cope with that sort of misalignment and that almost like this paradoxical outer success, inner failure, they go into all kinds of other things. So I was at a #1 hit in Russia that literally ended up, that hit became the anthem for Boris Yeltsin's presidential campaign. And I was clinically depressed. And there was this one guy who was a Canadian missionary who had the inner game stuff that I didn't have. And he took me under his wing and he nursed me back into health and made me whole. And that allowed me to fly higher and do all kinds of things downstream. And basically that was sort of the seed that was planted. And I started imitating sort of what he does, even informally. So I ended up coaching informally Olympic athletes and artists and entrepreneurs and people like that. And over time, it sort of grew into something a little bit more structured, a little bit more intentional. And then it became Exponential Life, which is the coaching program that I have now.
Awesome. So if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying is, whether you're a professional athlete, entertainer, etc., the world compensates you, pays you for those skills. Yeah. But you could be a terrible human being or just an immature human being, and nobody's going to pay you to work on yourself. They just want to see the show.
They want to see the show.
And you're rewarded for the show. And they don't necessarily want to see all the messy stuff behind the scenes and see you doing the work on that. Yeah. So that it gets neglected. And at some point people, I mean, you have to take care of yourself at some point, right?
And also if you're are sort of on the top of your profession, whatever your industry, people don't speak the truth to you. You're intimidating. So your signals become weaker and weaker. So there's just not enough. Most of the people they hang out with work for you in one way or another. Also, they don't have even the capacity to lead you, right, and to mentor you. So that's why masterminds, because people need someone tell me the truth.
They need a peer. They need a peer. Yeah,
they need a peer, right? And I think and the other thing is in the coaching is sort of the other layer that I have is personal brand development, and that's there because of that same thing, right? The person you once were, is that I realized early on that, oh my gosh, the thing that I can do, and this is literally, it can happen in every industry, big corporations, entrepreneurs, music, nonprofit, everything. If you have a specific, you're successful because of a specific approach that is unique to you, beyond what makes you beyond the basic. Everybody's good at some level, right? So if you take that and you own it and you publish it and you speak up about it, it's intellectual property, you sort of formalize it in one way or another and create a personal brand, your ability to influence more people, do more good in more places becomes exponentially higher. If you don't do it, right, you can have a great run this place and then it ends for no reason connected to you and you're starting over or almost over. But it's now better than, more than in any time in history, developing a personal brand is the thing to do. Right. You mentioned earlier, remember you said that there was a caste system, right? For most of humanity. Yeah. You were born into a caste and you died in the caste. Yeah. Then the Industrial Revolution came, you can actually improve your life within one generation. You move from, you're a farmer, you go become a worker in a factory, your kid can go to school. Yeah. And then in one generation happens. With the information revolution, that accelerates even more. You can do something in 1 year, in a few years. With the AI revolution, you can do it in months. And also be replaced in months. So this whole uniqueness, this whole being able to have your personal brand that is known by a certain number of people, actually AI proofs you, right? Because you are a category of one in one way or another.
So I agree with everything you're saying there, but I want to back up a little bit. When you met this missionary, who helped you kind of start to work on yourself and develop your inner self there. Did you already recognize that you needed to do some work? How did somebody get through to you? Were you looking, or
I was just desperate. Yeah. And basically the way it showed, because it usually ripple effects through all kinds of things, right? So later you can go, there's some mild signals and there's some strong signals. So mild signals is like, I could have done so much better on the business side of show business if I had more of those skills, for example, right? Even as a creative, having the skills to enter from anxiety and stress into a creative flow, joy, peace would skyrocket my ability to create new material. So
absolutely,
so if you don't emotionally self-regulate, now you become more limited as any professional in any field. But the thing that was the most painful for me was my romantic life, because I had zero sort of spiritual background, zero moral framework, because my parents were atheists. I come from 2 generations of broken homes, so I didn't know anyone who's married well. And then when my parents divorced, it really crushed me and traumatized me. So basically what I would do I would sabotage every relationship that got serious, right? And I was, of course, a pop star, so I had access to women, basically, unlimited, which is also not normal. That enhances the problem. And so what happened was this one girl that I was dating got pregnant. We had a baby. I don't know what to do with that, basically. I'm so in love with my daughter, but I don't know what to do with the girl. I treat her like trash, and she leaves and cuts me off from my daughter. So I have this existential crisis. I'm clinically depressed, and I basically realized I don't know how to build a family. I really want a family. I have a baby. I don't know how to build a family, and I lost my baby. So that was sort of the pain point. So when you ask the question, how did somebody get through to me? Dinner at this guy's house, and he has a functional family, a loving family. And I look at him, and I'm not exaggerating. It was that simple. I go, how do I get what you have? I didn't even say what it was, because he had it. You could see it in my face, you know. And he goes, I'll teach you if you want to learn. And I said, teach me. That's it. It was almost like a supernatural experience where I realized I have zero game in this, and I'm willing to do anything to get that game, to get the ability. And that's what I did. I basically became like a Daniel San to Mr. Miyagi to this guy. You know,
yeah, well, you got to be coachable, and it sounded like you were ready to be coached.
I was very, very coachable. I was literally at the peak of my career. Millions of people knew who I was, and I was like an actual apprentice to this guy. I treat him like a master, like a kung fu master. You know, like, just tell me what to do, I'll do everything.
And did he have a process, or did he just kind of look at you? He
was just organic. Yeah, he would teach me some principles from the Bible. He talked a lot about his family, about the principles he lives by. You know, life lessons, that kind of thing. And he would give me stuff like some basic stuff. Okay, how do you find a wife? Well, what are you looking in a woman? And I would rattle off things, and the whole thing would be off completely, you know. And he'd go, yeah, can I help you correct that list? And so he would give me a list, and I would be like in awe, going, oh, how did you get this? You know, like, for me, I was so ignorant from the whole. So I would adopt a lot of the stuff, and I would practice it, and I would be very, very self-disciplined, essentially. And I rewired my brain, my worldview. It took me about 4 years. I met my wife. By the time I met my wife, I knew exactly how to, all of that stuff. So I met her, I saw her, I courted her, I married her. I've been now married for 25 years. We have a beautiful family. The whole thing was completely healed, fixed forever. So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You work with a lot of people. What are some common challenges that you're seeing for Americans that are blocking them to perform at the level that they would aspire to perform at?
Well, I think one of them is there's such stress as a baseline in society. I mean, we know statistically that over half of Americans are literally permanently stressed, anxious.
What's causing that?
I think keeping up with the Joneses, money, sort of the complexity of life, the bombardment of just endless information, the screens, not knowing when to stop. For example, how big is big enough when you're running a company, for example? How many employees do you need? When do you stop because you're losing your mind and losing quality of actually the team that you're leading? All of those things. So I think stress management, emotional self-regulation is a huge deal. So I teach them how to go from stress to clear, focused, on command, on demand, in an hour, every single day. So that's a major superpower, right?
Yeah,
like if you have that ability that is predictable, then all of your talent, all of your giftedness can be now channeled towards building something new. So that's a big deal.
It's funny. I'm halfway through a book called The Anxious Generation, and it's talking about the kids that grew up with phones and then social media, and particularly how hard that generation has been hit with all kinds of mental illnesses. It's just, but I don't think that just because we're older, we're immune to it. I think many of those things that you mentioned, keeping up with everybody, you know, I had somebody ask me recently who's thinking about getting married, and they were very stressed out because, you know, all their friends were spending $100,000 on their wedding ceremonies. And I was like, you know,
that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. That's a decision that you could make. And you know, you want it to be special, but spending more money is not going to make it more special. You know, it's just
relationship exactly.
Yeah.
So, and the thing, so what we do is I teach him how to, first of all, how to not manage, but to fix that actually. Like you need a ritual in the morning. This is how you do it, etc. But then on a macro level, it's fixing some things that are like, there are studies that show exactly what the things are that are responsible for you to live a peaceful, fulfilled creative life, right? So it's, what are your spiritual practices? How are you with your family, your nuclear family? What kind of friendships do you have exactly? What are your relationships like? The meaningful work. What kind of meaning do you attach to your work? Your physical state, fun, just having fun. Do you laugh ever? That kind of thing. Do you ever rest? No high performer ever competes. If you go to the Olympics, no one competes as in a depleted state. In a depleted state, no one does. It would be stupid if you say, are you ever if you go to the Olympics, are you ever tired when you're in the beginning of a race? They're like, what is wrong with you? Of course, I would lose immediately. But that's normative in the business world.
Right. Like the chronic stress, the grind.
Yeah,
people, they're proud that they're putting in 14-hour days. And I'm like, you could do that from time to time, but after a while, it's going to, you think that you're performing at a high level, but you're not.
You're glorifying something, workaholism, right? You're glorifying that. It's a badge of honor. That is so unhealthy. So we talk about the macro things all the time as well. So there's a tool we use called the radar. And it's like 7 things. We actually measure it before, during, and after. And people keep track of it, and they go, okay, I've gone down here. Here's my total score. So it's qualitative measuring, but it's actually incredibly powerful when you start thinking about that from those categories, from that point of view. And
what are some of the things you measure?
Faith. I have F's for people to remember, right? Okay. So it's faith, which is a transcendent practice. How do you stop being at the center of your universe? Like, you are not the center of the universe, factually, right? So stop thinking that way, right? Think bigger. Faith, family, friendships, force, I call that meaningful work with the force you are in the world. Fun, fitness, finances. Those are the 7 things. Money is a massive, a very distorted culture when it comes to money. So people treat it, what you mentioned is a distorted view of money, for example, right? So if you have a healthy relationships, and it's crazy because it's such a simple thing, but I can tell you literally, I don't have to know anything about you. If you fill out that scorecard for me, I can tell you that even if you have some problems coming your way, like you're a little worried and you fill it out and you're scoring high on even 6 or the 7, between an 8 and a 10 across the board, you will weather that storm just fine. I'm not worried about you. If you're sailing smoothly and you have this sort of, caved in a radar where you have 2s and 3s on 2 or 3 categories, you're either suffering right now, you're 100% suffering right now, but also more trouble is coming your way. I can guarantee you that. I don't even have to know anything more about you, because these are such highly predictive things.
Everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. What do you do? I mean, because you mentioned a morning kind of routine. Yeah. How do you start in the morning? What do you do?
So I basically do like the 3 big elements. I have a 4th one that's sort of adjacent, but the things that I teach, like beginner level, let's say, it's you have a contemplative practice. You pray or meditate, journal, right? Start thinking about, just take a step back from your feelings, from the to-do list.
You don't pick up your phone and look at Facebook.
You do not. Yeah, you cannot. You cannot do that. Yeah, like that's immediate. That immediately sends you into survival mode, FOMO, doom scrolling, right? So you contemplate, meditate, pray. You can go for a walk. There's all kinds of ways to do it. If you do that for 20 minutes, then you do 20 minutes of physical activity. You lift, you walk. Preferably, you walk outside because you get sunshine. I forget what the term is. The Japanese have a term that basically means forest bathing, and I don't know I remember what the word is, but I do that every day. Sometimes twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, because I take a lot of my calls walking. Right? Yeah. So it's going to change your life forever. And the 3rd thing is you master a skill. That's the third 20 minutes. And it's basically whatever the low-hanging fruit is that you feel insecure about. It could be literally anything. It could be parenting, marriage, sales, marketing. The thing that you feel most, you get nervous and tense because you just don't know what to do with that. You learn that, and you watch, a video, listen to a podcast, you feel a little bit less inadequate, right? So imagine that every single day, your life will change in a week. I can highly predict your mood, your sharpness. In a week, you'll be a different person. Now, you can expand on that and master that over time, and that's going to make you top performer wherever you are. My process is 3 hours because I attach creativity to it. So I write for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, every single day.
And you're doing most of this, or a lot of it, at the beginning of the day. So you start off with investing in yourself, which is awesome. I do something similar, and I've coached people in the past that you have to invest in yourself. And then no matter what else happens in the world that day, that week, you could pat yourself on the back and say, but I made myself better. I got
absolutely.
stronger, fitter, smarter. I developed some better relationships. And if you focus on that, those are positives. And all the other stuff out there, you can't really control.
No,
right? So
you
can't be blamed. Let me ask you another question. I find it's really important to surround myself by people who are doing things that I respect or aspire to do.
Yeah.
But that's not always easy, at least for me. Mm-hmm. I typically fall into, when my kids were younger, I end up hanging out with that my children's friends' parents are the other soccer parents, etc.
yeah, that's right.
So, and maybe my next door neighbors once in a while, because it's just convenient. And then old buddies who, it could be high school, middle school, college friends. And we're friends because we have that shared past or history, but they're not necessarily going down the same path that I aspire to go down. There's nothing wrong with their path. I'm just saying that maybe that's not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And I've always found that if I'm around smarter people or fitter people or more skilled people, I up my game. But how do you build that circle?
I mean, it's very hard. I think it's very, very hard. I think you either pay for it and you get a coach. And I think that's actually a really good thing because you can accelerate things quite a bit. Or you convene people. So, for example, I have a group that I convened. We meet every Monday. And it took me a decade to build it, to invite people into it and develop sort of the rhythm, the relationships here in Austin. And and these guys are just extraordinary. So a tech founder, a finance guy who manages billions of dollars, a person who is like this creative voice actor who does like some of the biggest audiobooks and big sort of projects like that. A Taekwondo grandmaster, ninth Dan. I have this insane group that I've bit by bit I've invited people into it, and we love each other. We invest in each other. We have a rhythm every Monday. We get together. We take a break for the summer when everybody starts traveling. When everybody starts traveling and we take a break, if you're in town, you still get together. So, for example, most of my group was out yesterday, and then us and another couple went to watch a movie together, or go to a restaurant. So it's that kind of thing. But and these guys have all kinds of things that I don't have, for example, right? So they've raised their kids in a particular. So I ask them about everything. How does it feel like not being a mutt and growing up internationally, right? How does it feel to be a third generation or fourth generation Texan, right? Mm-hmm. How does it feel to go to an Ivy League school, and then how do you build a career? When you manage all this money for all these people, how are those people? What are their weaknesses and strengths? And so I try to absorb like a sponge, right? I really ask a lot of questions, and I'm very curious around them.
And when you meet every week, or when you convene them, I like that word. Is there some kind of structure to the activity, or is it just like, hey, we're going to go out for dinner, or what is it?
No, we usually have some sort of short Bible study, right? And I'm not even the main guy. I've sort of convened it, and I basically said, look, I don't want to be the main guy, so we take turns, basically. Okay. Right? So we're all like, there's an interdependence there. So the healthiest way to live, I think, is interdependence. So on the one side, you have independence, where you're sort of this atomistic sort of person, and America is very independent in general. Oh,
totally, yeah.
And I think it's super unhealthy in the extreme. Or you can be codependent, where, unhealthy things are there, you can't get out, that kind of thing. So everybody knows what that means. Interdependence is sort of in the middle, where you do submit yourself, some of your schedule, some of your will, some of your preferences to the group, right? For the common good. So the common good is sort of this main thing. And everybody understands, everybody in that group knows or feels that they need that group, right? So there's this interdependence. Awesome. And even when we have some sort of disagreement, we can talk it through, for example, right? Have a painful discussion, and we're devoted to each other's company and well-being.
That's great. No, I totally agree with you. I think the sense of community has, in many places, vanished from the U.S.
Yeah,
I mean, people move all the time. Some of the strongest communities I've seen, or I have some friends who are very involved with their churches, and that is a sense of community, especially the churches that require you or strongly encourage you to participate in some of their organizational activities and things like that. But having lived in Asia, oh my gosh, that's just because, families and communities are so important still.
Oh, very, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's interesting kind of the contrast between there and here. Well, hey, I just want to ask you a couple more questions. You're given a lot. You've got your, the work that you're doing in Africa. And then you're helping individuals, coaching them. And then you have, this group that you participate in. How else do you go out and continue to learn? Who do you look to? Who inspires you? Who motivates you? Or what do you do?
Well, every once in a while, I'm coached by someone in an area where I feel like if I need something accelerated, I go get the coach and I pay for the coach. That group is a major source of wisdom, like ongoing, and I mean all areas of life, marriage, parenting, business, the whole thing. And then I do that, my routine, right? So I have all these quote unquote proxy mentors, I call them, who have no idea that I exist, but I would basically, if I choose for example, if I choose somebody who coaches you in sales, let's say, or marketing, or how to develop a newsletter that goes to tens of thousands of people, for example, I would get on a binge and I would follow this one person, and I follow it every single day until I feel like I can finish their sentences.
Wow.
So it's that level of hyper focus. And then I can feel that I've been satiated with that kind of wisdom, and I can move on to something adjacent. And almost always that this other person will lead you to the next person, right? And my point is, you become incredibly good at a variety of things if you stop dabbling, and people dabble like crazy, and they give up. They start and they stop. They start and they stop. But you don't dabble. You just pick a thing and you stay with it for, let's say, 4 months, right? Like, honestly, 18 hours, I think there's somebody, I don't know if that statistic is even true, but it feels true that if you spend 20, 30 minutes a day doing something, within a year, you will be probably in the top 25% of people doing that thing. And I really believe that to be true, not about everything, but about most things, especially when it comes to things of the mind, right?
Yeah, it's that consistency. And,
it's consistency.
And if you are really driven about it, it's funny because I've dabbled in a lot of things, but when I dabble, I also get very, very intense and get into it. So, I've done a variety of martial arts, and when I started, man, I would read everything, watch everything.
Exactly.
I would practice at home, our backyard. Our neighbors thought we were nuts, and then, but I'd go to the dojo and I studied in many different places, but I would always show up early. And it's funny because a lot of people would show up early and then just sit there and talk. And I would be practicing, and I'm like, well, what are you doing, man? It's not like you show up and do class for an hour. Yeah. It's like, you're here, man. Let's get going, but I've seen it, for people who are really into things. Yeah. You can make a lot of progress in a year. I've seen it with my kids, like doing music, man. It's like, why wasn't I doing that? How are they?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's, and the thing is, when I coach people, I coach accomplished people mostly, right? These are not mostly, but all of them are accomplished. Otherwise, like, I wouldn't offer them, hey, let me teach you how to create a personal brand if I don't see anything you're good at, right? So that would be stupid. Right. So obviously I would offer it only to a person who can create a personal brand in the first place. But it's remarkable how very accomplished people haven't learned the skill of focusing and creating their own value, putting it out in the world. And because of that, their accomplishments are so diluted, and they get frustrated.
I 100% agree with you. And I'm just looking at my own track record in itself. It's like, you can't do everything all that's at the same time. You got to focus. Let's kind of wind this down. In terms of building a personal brand, can you summarize why it's important and what are some of the key things in terms of how you do it?
Well, let me start with sort of the scary part. The scary part is that the AI revolution, which we're in the very first year of, honestly, right? Yeah. The actual revolution, it's going to change. It's going to change everything. It's going to wipe out millions and millions of white collar jobs. Knowledge is no longer of high value. It's commodified, right? That's it. So there's millions of jobs that are going to be completely replaced. And anyone who can't really create a category that is unique, it's at risk to one point to another, So I think that's sort of the big thing. The best way to AI proof yourself is to create a personal brand that appeals to specific people with a specific offer, with a specific edge and solution. Then that's it. The AI can't replace that because you're not a commodifiable thing, right?
Right.
And so that's sort of I think that accelerates and intensifies the motivation people should have, in my opinion. But besides that, it's easier than it's ever been in the history of humanity to create something that serves people specifically with the very unique solutions that you offer, the qualities that who you are. You are a miracle. You're a one of a kind, objectively. So whatever it is that you do, you can do it in a unique way. And sort of the way to get there from the beginning first is I have these 3 pillar things. One, the result is the brand, and I want to get you to a actual sort of business model and brand in 9 to 12 weeks. That's basically the promise that I make. But to get there, what you start is with fuel, what motivates you. And the thing that we started off, right? It's like, look, if you're in survival mode, you won't be able to build anything because you can't even see an alternative future, right? So we need to teach you how to get creative, clear, peaceful, joyful, so you can build something. Second piece, okay, you start building it. I call it the edge, right? What is your specific edge? Get as granular, as specific as possible, and it's amazing what comes together when you start thinking, what do I really love? Besides sort of the normal generic skills that you have, what makes me me, right? What makes me a category of one? And it's so hard for people to even think that way, because what is easy for them is so familiar that it doesn't feel valuable. So it's a little bit of a painful process because people go, well, I'm not special. And I'm like, yes, you are. We'll dig it up, right? So there's a treasure there that you have to dig up and recognize as a treasure, and then productize it, monetize it, and deploy a brand a solution that you want to offer to the world. So that's essentially the process. And it's so cool because these are extraordinarily talented, gifted people. And all of them have some sort of inner doubt about the value that they bring. And so we go through the process of finding that value and bringing it to the world.
Yeah, I think figuring out your purpose or what you're really good at and then, and how are you going to stand out amongst others is really challenging. Earlier, you were talking about how you search out experts and, kind of do a deep dive, and that will lead you into. Yeah. And I say there's one book that I like to continually go back to. It's Tim Ferriss's Tool of the Titans. Yeah. And I've gone through it maybe 2 or 3 times, the audio version, while I'm out walking.
Me too.
And then I'll listen to it, I'll be like, oh, okay, now I got to study up on this person, and that person will recommend a book, and I'm like, oh, I got to go on that book. And it's just every time I listen to it, it takes me down other rabbit holes. But in that book, I can't remember who he's talking to, but I think it might have been the creator of Dilbert cartoons, where he said, you have to figure out not the one thing that you're better than everybody, because that's pretty tough. If you're going to be the best singer, the fastest runner, the best actor, actress, whatever, you got to figure out what are the two things that you can combine that you're the best at, better at. You know, maybe you're the top 90% over here, or in this other, so with Dilbert, he could write cartoons. He could actually write the text, but he was also good at drawing, right? And he was able to combine the two. Oh, and he had the business background too, so he had this business sense in terms of his cartoons.
Yeah, exactly.
And combine those. So if you can take like three things that you really, really enjoy and can combine those into one, that's where that uniqueness comes in, and it allows you something to. But what's your exercise or your process for helping people kind of uncover what areas they want to focus on?
Well, it's sort of this. There is a process. There's a structure to it, right? But I think it's really more the environment. It's you say this is a dedicated space for you to hunt for treasure. That alone is, I think, 50% of the success, because we just don't allow ourselves an environment for that. We don't have it. We sort of react to life. We don't proact, right? So that's one thing. And we have cohorts for that reason. So people give each other feedback. And it's just every single call that I have with a cohort, and it's cohort one-on-one and asynchronous. So there's like 3 layers of support. It's like there's magic. I can't even use another word. It's magic. It's like, I don't know how this just happened, but it happened, that kind of thing, right? So I look forward to those, and that happens. But the process, I would say, we just do very, very on the surface basic things, but they force you to think about your life, right? What did you love growing up, right? Like when I was growing up in Africa, and my dad is a mechanical engineer, so he would pull me under the car and show me the stuff and help me get the tools. I loved being with him, but that didn't resonate with me. Like I was like, whatever. And then I joined like a little folk group, a singing group with a bunch of Chilean kids, and we'd sing Latin American classics, whatever, right? And I remember when I would sing, time will stop. I could do it forever. That's the feeling I had. Right. Yeah. So creativity became a very clear fit, and I lost it from, 9 to 25 because I didn't pull on that thread, and maybe 23 when I started actually doing music again. Right. I'm like, I remember this was important. So things like that. So you layer those things, right? And there's all kinds of. It's such a beautiful thing to uncover the treasure that are just under the surface. And every human being has it, and we are the worst at recognizing that ourselves. Right? We need somebody to help us with that, because it's so familiar, it doesn't feel valuable.
Amazing point. Well, hey, Christian, I really enjoyed this conversation. I want to say congratulations on your success, and also, hats off to you for all the positive work that you're doing, Africa, here. And I'm sure every person that you touch, you bring a big positive influence to them. And thank you so much for being on the Grow Fast podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. May I offer something to your audience? Please. If you go to exponential.life without the E, exponential starts with an X, there's a really cool, basically scorecard there. You click, you just answer a few questions, and it basically answers the questions, how ready you are to start a personal brand, and ask you like 30 questions under 5 minutes, and you'll get a report in your inbox. It's a great exercise.
Awesome. What I'll do is I'll put links to that, and I think the name of the other organization, the
Ascend Academy. Ascend
Academy. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll put the links to both those in the show notes. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. You take care, man. It's been great talking to you. Cheers.
You too. Thanks.